So I want to start off by saying I just wanted to make this video for players like myself who may be returning back to Diablo 4 after seeing the expansion for Season 6, Vessel of Hatred. I came back for Season 5 just so I could see what had changed before we go into Season 6, and honestly, it's been quite of a lot. For me personally, I stopped playing Diablo after Season 2, the vampire season, and coming back to the game, there was some stuff that had changed by Season 2, but now going into Season 6, there's a few things I just want to cover just because I was a little confused, and the game does give you some guidance, but also sometimes gamers just kind of skip through some of the tutorials and then end up missing, or the game doesn't quite go into the same detail that I want to for some of these changes. If you've been playing Diablo from the start of the game all the way through Season 5, well then this video is probably not for you, but honestly if I missed anything you can just throw it down in the comments. But overall I'm just trying to go over some of the small things that I found out, and I'm glad I know now going into Season 6. So I just wanted to make a quick video just going over some of those things. For the first thing, it's just pretty quick. The nightmare dungeons, they've been tweaked. They have way more enemies. They're a lot more fun than they used to be. You still use them to level up your glyphs. I believe for Season 6, there's going to be ways to level up glyphs besides nightmare dungeons, but nightmare dungeons are still a great way to do it. And one thing I do want to point out is that the sigils still work the same that they did in all the previous seasons, but there is a buff. I don't know what season it came in, but it's new to me, and it'll be new to you if you're returning to Season 6. The Ancestral Awakening buff, as you can see here, gives you a 20% bonus to XP on your glyphs. Now, nightmare dungeons already are given more XP than they used to for glyphs, which is great because now you can get through your glyphs a lot faster and not have to mess around nightmare dungeons, because honestly nightmare dungeons are probably on the low end of things to do in this game now. So luckily there's an XP bonus, and as well there's a 20% glyph that, just look out for that when you pick up sigils. That's pretty much the only one I was using throughout this second half of Season 5 when I came back to play, and I just wanted to point that out for some of you who might be coming back. And then right here you'll see this is a tier 100 dungeon without the 20%, the XP that you get, and a tier 100 dungeon with the 20%. So as you can see, it's a pretty big boost. Help you get through those glyphs a lot faster. Right next to it is an Infernal Horde Compass. Now, I believe that this was the mechanic for Season 5, and it's probably some of the most fun I've had in Diablo just because the waves and waves of combat they send you. And as you can see on the screen, this is a tier 7 that you're watching. There's a lot of enemies. They just send waves and waves of enemies come in, and it's a really fun way to see how strong your builds are. I did do some tier 8s, but when you compare the rewards versus how difficult it is to kill the enemies, unless you're in the top echelon of gear and builds, honestly the tier 7s were just better. But I found myself playing the Infernal Horde Compasses more than anything else in the game. But these were dropping with the rewards from the season pass because it was the main function of the season. But going into Season 6, you will no longer be able to craft these, so I'm not even going to show that you can actually craft these the same way you can craft sigils, but they'll drop from like boss fights or hell tides, just random other content throughout the game. But I'm glad these are returning. I'm glad that these aren't just a Season 5 exclusive and that they'll be a main part of the game moving forward. But just look out for these Infernal Horde Compasses. Now, what made Infernal Horde so good was the rewards at the end. And you'll see this. There's a big chest in the middle that costs 60 of the currency that they give you for fighting the Infernal Horde and beating the council at the end. And then there are 2 chests on either side. Now, I believe the chest on the left is not going to be there anymore, and I believe that the bosses for Season 6, the council that you saw me fight there at the end, those 3, will be dropping loot, and then you can come in here and this chest won't be 60 anymore. It's going to be 200, and the chances of getting better loot out of it is going to be higher, which is good. And then you see me just spamming the materials. This is the main thing that I did throughout Season 5, was just continue to do the Infernal Horde Compass, grab the material out of here, and it was just a process. You just had to keep spending 20 every time. Luckily, a quality of life change for Season 6, I saw that you can spend the 200 on the big chest to get the gear if you want, and then after, similar to the gold chest, the one you see here at the bottom, you just pressed it and it took all the rest of your currency. That is how the materials are going to work moving forward. So it just takes whatever you have left in the top right and just gives you the materials equivalent to that versus just having to press it over and over again. So that'll be a nice quality of change. As you can see, we have a tier 7 compass, we have a tier 5, we have a tier 3 compass. Now, the tiers are directly related to the type of gear you'll get. They're just levels, and that's how everything works in Diablo. But it's important to point out, and I'll go over it soon when I get to gear and how to level up gear. The tier gives you different material rewards that you will use for leveling up your gear later. Now, I'll show you that here at the pit, which is another mechanic that was new to me and probably be new to you if you're coming into Season 6. The pit gives you the same level rewards. Now, the pit is basically a timed event where you just have to go through, kill everything as fast as you can, and then fight the boss at the end. And in the end, they give you a reward. And depending on the tier that you're in, you'll either get one of 3 different materials. Tier 1 through 30, you get the first level of masterwork material. Tier 31 through 60, you get the second level of material. And then tier 61 and up, you will get the nether iron, which is just the material you'll need to do the last upgrades, which I'll go over here in a second. Now, once you get to tier 61, once you get to Infernal Horde tier 7, nether iron is the only material you'll get, and you'll still need the other materials to upgrade your gear. But once you get to a place where you're just getting nether iron, that's okay. You don't have to go back to easier content to get the other material. You just go over to the alchemist, which is in every single town. You go over to the transmutation tab and go down to crafting materials. You can turn nether iron into Ingolith. You can turn Ingolith into the whatever the first one's called. You can turn nether iron into the second one. You can turn the second one into the first one. And it's that simple. And then this material is important because you will need it to upgrade your gear later, which I'll show you here in a little bit. Before we get to that, I just want to go over the Hell Tides. Now, the Hell Tides, they're pretty much the same. There's a new boss fight in the middle, but there is one thing that I want to point out that is pretty important to the Hell Tides and why they're worth doing. Now, besides the fact that every event, every boss gives you material for other bosses later, the Hell Tides, just like Nightmare Dungeons, have been significantly boosted. There are way more enemies, they spawn faster, the events spawn faster, and then there is a boss in the middle. But on top of that, there is a bounty system. The more enemies you kill, the more chests you open, the more events that you do, your bounty that you'll see up here in the top right, that bar continues to grow, and at each level they send enemies, but when the bar is completely full, you will see the little red eye glow, and at that point they're sending some bounty hunter after you to kill you, and it's always going to be a character that you could play in the game. Like, it's going to be a playable character like a sorcerer, a druid, rogue, just somebody you'd see in the game, and they look like they would if you were in the PvP area. Now, they're important because they give you mind cages. In mind cages, as you can see by the description here, they last 60 minutes, which is how long Hell Tides last, and they increase the enemy levels by 10 each time, and they stack up to 3. So you can see here in the video, I'm fighting a level 133 because I'm a level 100. Hell Tides standard still do 3 levels higher than you. So when you go into a Hell Tide, they're 103. After you use 3 mind cages, you get to fight level 133 enemies, and that's good once you get to a place where your gear's good enough to do that. That's a good thing because they drop far more cinders, which means you will have to do far less events and you can get through all of this content a lot faster. Now, I bring up the mind cages and I bring up the bounty because the only place I've seen to get a mind cage is from the bounty hunter that comes after you. You need to be grinding through all this stuff. So basically the loop is do events, collect cinders, use the cinders to open chests, collect the bane that come out of chests, use the bane to summon the boss, kill the boss, piss off the bounty hunter. The bounty hunter comes to kill you. You pick up the mind cages. It's a pretty simple loop. Hell Tides are pretty much the same, but now there's this added feature. There's already a lot of enemies. You increase their level and it'll give you more cinders, and it speeds up every part of the process. And honestly, just like Nightmare Dungeons, Hell Tides are a lot more enjoyable because of it. Now, we talked about all those materials that you would be getting from the Infernal Hordes and the pit, and I want to show you what those materials are, what they do, and how leveling up gear has changed. In the old system, you would just level up gear 4 times, and whatever the rolls were, they would increase by a certain percentage, and that's how that would work. Now, in the new system, you level them up 12 times, but each 4 levels, one of your affixes on your piece of gear will upgrade, and you can see that because right here is pair of pants that is not upgraded. It has a greater affix on it, which is also new to me. Greater affixes just drop on gear and they have this star, and it just means that there is an affix on this piece of gear that hits a higher threshold than normal pieces of gear. So resource generation here has one. It's at 48.8%. I believe the standard high was 30%. So you'll see significant buffs. Same here. The intelligence on a pair of gloves is supposed to be a 90 cap. This one has a greater affix for intelligence, so it's at a 149. And then like this ring, all three of its base stats all have greater affixes on them. So intelligence is at a new cap, maximum life's at a new cap, and damage is at a new cap. Now the thing that I want to point out is you'll see there are two more stats under it. Now, just like it used to be, you go to the occultist, you can re-roll one affix. That's always existed. But you can re-roll one of the three existing affixes on the top. Now, when you get a new piece of gear, you can come over to the blacksmith, go to the tempering tab, and you'll be able to add two more affixes that are specific to tempering. This is where you can add things that are specific to your build. So like I added critical strike damage and Ice Blade's lucky hit chance. Critical strike damage is always good, and the lucky hit chance works well with the fractured winter glass. Unique. Now you just go to the tempering tab. You can place your piece of gear in here to be tempered. Now there is a tempering durability thing. The higher the level of the gear, the more times you can re-roll this. Now different from re-rolling at the occultist, if you get a piece of gear where this one I've rolled on critical strike damage and ice blades, you can go to the category to try to re-roll and get a different stat. Different from the occultist, if you don't like the stat, you don't get to keep the old one. So re-rolling here is a big deal, and you need to pay attention to the tempering re-rolls, the tempering durability, because once you've run out, you can't do it anymore and you're stuck with what you have on there. So for this one, you see I have critical strike damage. I'm not going to re-roll this one because critical strike damage is what I wanted, but you can see that there are 4 options within Worldly Finesse, there are 5 options within the Pyromancy, and there's just every level for every different build. So just something to look out for to level up your gear, to be more tailored to what you're trying to do. And then certain pieces of gear can only do certain recipes for tempering. So mobility and resources, like resource can only go on rings, defensive and utility will go on like your chest piece and your helmet. And then your weapons are obviously the only ones that can get weapon recipes. So that was a big change for me. Ancestral gear can get 5 total affixes that can help boost your build and for whatever you're looking for. Once you have set the 5 affixes, you've re-rolled with the occultist, you've put the recipes on from the blacksmith, then you can go to the blacksmith and you can use those materials we talked about earlier to upgrade your overall stats. Similar to the old system where you do it 4, you can do it 12 times here. So I want to show you what this looks like. I have a unique pair of pants here. I'm going to put them on. In the bottom left, we have the lowest level of material from those first levels of the pit and from tier 3 and lower of the Infernal Hordes. This is where you use that material. And it says right there, all affixes will be increased by 5%. And that happens every time you do this. So there are 2, rank 3, now rank 4, they're going to buff 1 affix by 25%, and you're going to get this animation. It's going to turn that number blue. So I got +4 to chain lightning on my skill tree. That number's blue now. That means that that's the 25% boosted affix. Now you'll notice that I have a piece of gear like this ring, for instance. The damage number is yellow and the unstable currents cooldown is blue. There are colors that show how many times one stat can be boosted. Since you can upgrade it 12 times and there's 4 levels per upgrade, you can get one stat boosted 3 times, but it's all RNG. It's complete luck. So you saw in this ring, my damage got boosted twice, which turned the color yellow. Had it been boosted all 3 times, the unstable currents wouldn't have got a boost, so it would still be gray, and the damage would probably be in the 80s, and it would be an orange number. It just represents how many times one stat has been boosted. That's the first level of Masterwork. We can go to the second level of Masterwork. And again, he's going to put a 25% boost on one of my affixes. And as you can see, he put the exact same boost on the same one. So now the number's yellow. I don't have enough upgrade it to level 12. I can get to rank 10, but once you get enough material for that, he'll give you the 3rd boost, and if it gives it to the same one, it would turn the number orange and it will go up to 7 instead of 6. I have not been lucky enough to get that boost on the same stat 3 times. Now what is nice is it'll boost any of the stats. It won't just boost whatever. If you have a greater affix, your greater affix can receive the boost. And you can see that on the ring where all 3 of them were greater affixes. It's going to boost them all the same, and the 25% will go to one of them. Doesn't matter if it's a greater affix or just the standard roll. So that's tempering and masterwork and the greater affixes. The last couple things I want to get into here are the changes to Uber Uniques. They're no longer called Uber Uniques. They're no longer the color of Uber Uniques. They're now purple, and they're called Ancestral Mythic Uniques. And they're way easier to get than they used to be. You won't be able to have a chance at these until you're at a much higher level, because you'll have to summon what's called a tormented boss. There are boss dungeons all over the map. So you can open up the map. There's a boss dungeon over in the Dry Steeps. There's a boss dungeon at the bottom of the map. That's where Duriel is. Vishan is over by the Tree of Whispers. There's bosses all over the map. Lord Zier, the one from Season 2, he's over in the Darkened Way. These bosses can be summoned by getting materials from certain events all throughout the game. But those materials will just summon whatever normal version of them that exists. And it tells you right on it. So like the blood that you get from the Helltides from defeating the boss in the Helltides, you just need 9 of these and you can summon him in the Fractured Peaks. But if you want to summon the Tormented version, and the Tormented version of all of these bosses are level 200. They're quite difficult to beat, at least while you're going through the game. You will need 3 times the summoning materials, and you will also need these stones, which drop from the Infernal Hordes. So you can see I went into the Darkened Way. We're running through the dungeon. It's a path that you will get very used to because you're going to do these boss fights a lot. You get into his dungeon, you have to walk very short walk. There's always a couple enemies, and the enemies are always the level that the standard boss is, so you can see that these enemies are level 80. So if I were to summon Zier in his normal form, he would be level 80, but we're not going to do that. We are going to summon the Tormented version. So you open up the Bloodied Altar, you see Lord Zier, 9 exquisite blood materials to summon Lord Zier, and he'll be level 85. Or you tab over to the Tormented Lord Zier. Now you see I have 28 stones and I have 27 exquisite blood, which happens to just be the perfect amount to summon him. It's always 3 times whatever the normal amount is. I got the stones from doing the Infernal Hordes and opening the materials. Let's summon him. He comes out at level 200, and you're going to see him drop a bunch of high value equipment. Now, these are your best chance to get the mythics and the greater affixes, the multiple greater affixes on uniques and stuff. And this is the best place to get uniques in general. I actually give Blizzard a lot of credit. The way they set this up, for you to get the highest and best gear in the game, you had to play every aspect of the game, which I think is overall good for the base of the game. So just for Zier, I got all those exquisite bloods from doing Helltides. When you defeat Greg, it gives you stuff to defeat Dariel, and same with Vishan. And it's all in a loop that you'll figure out. I can make a video on how to get all the boss material if you want later, but I just wanted to show you how to summon these and what the stones do that you get from the Infernal Horde. Now, the reason that we do this, the reason everybody does this, is for these mythics, these Uber Uniques, whatever they used to be called, whatever. They just changed the entire build. For example, with this one, Tyrael's Might gives you that divine barrage boost that you get from shrines. It's just another source of damage, and a lot of these mythics will give you a high amount of damage reduction that you can't get anywhere else. Most people who are playing this game know what Uber Uniques are. They're just more obtainable to get than they used to be, which is actually really good for the game, because before, I think them naming them Ancestral Mythics is very appropriate because they were just myths. From release of the game through Season 2, very few, if anybody, had them, and I'm glad that they're obtainable now. Now, they're not easy to get. They still have an extremely low drop rate, but if you are able to get your hands on one, they will completely change any build that you're trying to make in the game. And by far, the best way to get your hands on one is by defeating the Tormented versions of all the bosses. There's one other way to get a mythic, and it is actually nice because you can get a specific mythic. I'll go over what it looks like here in Season 5, but there are small changes to it in Season 6. At the Alchemist, there's also Resplendent Sparks. There's just little blue orb, and they're the rarest thing in the game. In Season 5, you automatically got one by completing the Mother's Gift. I know it's different every season, but there's some seasonal journey, and there's always a person that gives you a reward. And you just complete these rewards, and when you got to the final reward, it gave you a greater arms cache. And in that cache, it says right here, you would get a Resplendent Spark. I completed this little journey, and I got the cache, I opened it, and it dropped a Resplendent Spark. And you can use those by coming over to the Alchemist, going to the Transmutation, and you can see all 7 mythics right here. Now, it doesn't tell you exactly what they're going to do, but just know that they're all going to roll perfect. As you can see on the other gear shows you the level of which your affixes could have rolled, but mythics only have 1 level. It's the highest level, and it's higher than any other piece of gear in the game, and they have stats on it that other pieces of gear don't have at all, like base damage reduction exists on the Teriel's Might. Damage reduction while healthy exists on Melted Heart. So at the Alchemist, you need 4 Resplendent Sparks, and you get one from completing the seasonal journey. You get one for the first time you defeat Tormented Duriel, and you get one the first time you defeat the Echo of Lilith. Now, that's only 3. The 4th one, you had to get your hands on a mythic and break it down at the blacksmith. So I'll show you right here. You go to the blacksmith, you go to the mythic you got to drop, or maybe you traded for using the trading chat within the game. But regardless of how you got it, once you got one, if you didn't like it, for instance, the Melted Heart, I personally think it's the worst one. It's the one I got, and so when I got it, I broke it down, and I'll show you what that looks like. It says, are you sure you want to destroy the Melted Heart? Yes, you destroy the Melted Heart. You can see right here in the salvage materials, there's a Resplendent Spark. Once you have 4 of those, you can create whichever mythic you want to create. It's a good way to just get the specific one that you're looking for. Resplendent Sparks, I've already seen from the patch notes, are changing in Season 6. The way it's going to work now, I believe that, 1, the Alchemist no longer crafts them. I believe the Blacksmith's going to be the one that crafts them. But you will only need 2 Resplendent Sparks, but that's to give you a random mythic. The way to get specific mythics in Season 6 is there's going to be certain materials that you will need for each of the mythics, and then you only need 1 Resplendent Spark. Now that's something I can go over in a future video. If that's something you'd like to see, let me know down in the comments. I think the last thing I want to show is pets. They've added pets to the game. That's honestly just a nice quality of life change. Outside of actual gear, when they drop materials or gold or cinders or just things that you don't have to actually click on to loot, you would just walk over. Your pet just runs around and does it itself. You'll see here, right here on the map is where I went. There was a dog here. You just pet them. You pet the pet, and then they're like, cool, now you have a companion. You went to the wardrobe where you set all of your stuff, like the way your gear looks and stuff, and you can select your pet. As you can see, I have a tiny little leopard chasing me around. There's 4 in the game right now. I'm sure they're going to add more. And then the last thing, and one of my favorite things that they added since I last played, was the Scroll of Amnesia. Now, the Scroll of Amnesia is one thing that we've been asking for a long time. Obviously we want loadouts. It doesn't look like loadouts are coming, but at least now with the Scroll of Amnesia, you can just reset your skill tree, and you can reset your Paragon board for free, and you do not have to spend any money. Because if I go in here, you can see I can refund all of my Paragon points for 5.6 million coins. That is expensive, and I don't want to do that. Same thing with the skill tree. I could reset my entire skill tree for 2.6 million gold. But with the Scroll of Amnesia, I'll show you here. I'll click on it. You just click on it, consume, accept, yes, and boom, your entire skill tree and Paragon board is empty. But yeah, that's just some of the changes. I know for a lot of people who've been playing the game, these are kind of basic level changes, but for me and anyone who's curious clicking on this video who hasn't played in several seasons, these are pretty different, and I'm glad that I know them now. I hope this video helps you, and if you're excited for Season 6 and the expansion for Vessel of Hatred, leave a like, and I'll be posting some build videos and going over some of the new game mechanics. But I think that's all I got for you. Thanks for watching. Deuces.